Hello, hello. Welcome back. I hope you're all enjoying the new year. Here today in the Tier 10 British aircraft carrier Audacious. We're on the map Warrior's Path. The mode is Domination, and we're against an enemy Midway. We're in 8 to 10 matchmaking, so not only Tier 10s for once. Enemy team also has a Thunder, Yamato, Iowa, North Carolina, Massachusetts. Nothing too threatening, maybe the 2 Americans a little bit, or the 3 Americans a little bit. Thunder is a bit annoying with defensive fire, but nothing too concerning. Puerto Rico, Venezia, Moskva, Again, nothing too concerning again. Maybe Puerto Rico or Moskva if they pop defensive fire, if they are indeed running it. Charles, Martel, Shimakaze. DD wise, nothing special. 2 DGs, so mirror spawn. So there's a GD here and a GD here. Been enjoying the winter break, obviously, so a little less content than usual. Hopefully you were all also able to get some time off. If not, well, at least spend some time with family and friends. And hopefully just enjoy. We do find the Shimakaze here with the Audacious's formidable Westland Wyvern rocket squadron, so let's see how 42 rockets feels. Unable to get the reticle to narrow too much, so only skim move 4 rockets, but it's still good enough for a 3,000 damage and a fire. Turning in, now the Westland Wyvern is a bit sluggish, holding down on the air brake. Gonna try and relight that fire. 7 rockets on this pass. This time, slowly chipping at us. Finally just managed to chip a plane, so it's gonna take out 16 of our rockets, but still got plenty of those. Hopefully we can get a nicer reticle here. Overleading a little bit. Not very successful, but 9,000 damage on a Shimakaze, still 9,000. Just gonna relaunch the rockets immediately now. One of the problems with the Westland Wyvern as a platform, this is of course the aircraft that the Audacious uses for all her squadrons, is that she's fairly sluggish. So the cruise speed is 143 with plane speed, and boosted she does 184, which is fairly sluggish if you consider that the F8F Bearcat of the Midway does 221 knots, and the J8s of the, or sorry, not the J8s, but the Hakuryu rocket plane, I forget the name off the top of my head, but the Rikufuku does just about 208 knots while boosted, so both of its competitors are much faster. In exchange, however, it gets to launch a metric ton of rockets. You can see here, even though the reticle is quite large, I am dealing significant amounts of damage to this Shimakaze. I've already basically killed him. Down to 3/4 health. Should really smoke sometime this century, my dude. And the sheer density of rockets does make her fairly formidable against all forms of light targets, including beached cruisers like this Charles Martel. Alright, so we've gotten rid of the Shimakaze, but they are pushing my flank. And there's a Shimakaze pushing in my Shimakaze. There's a Venezia pushing in my Shimakaze at B, so I will try to give him a hand. We've mostly dispatched the Shimakaze on our own. Looks like he may have taken a little bit of fire from the enemy. I have lost a cruiser in exchange, however. My hull is fairly detectable, so I'm gonna try and save myself. Looks like the Venezia is still just hovering about where he was. Only now does he drop fighter, or drop his smoke. Gonna have to wait that one out. In the meantime, I will drop a fighter for the Shimakaze. Just keep him defended, even if it only trims 3 of the dive bombers, that'll be fine. Looks like Yamato is popping out. So I'm gonna arm out quite distant. Another factor of the Westland Wyvern's slow speed is that if you arm at a distance, because you have low plane speed overall, it's hard to traverse long distances, which means if you arm a little too early, you're very prone to, well, getting a crappy attack in here. not worth attacking that again. Let's hit that Puerto Rico on the edge. I don't want to deal with that 44% belt. Now the Venezia smoke has ended, but it's too difficult for me to re-engage him. In this position, used a bit too much of my boost here. So it's going to be difficult to get both attacks off here on this Puerto Rico. Now I am using those slow British torpedoes. Note that the Puerto Rico's solo AA defense is not that tanky. My lone plane had 2,000 health, you'll see. Do get a triple hit onto him. Now the Venezia smoke is done, I'm gonna go over with the level bombers. Nothing much to say about this game so far. They're kind of just lining themselves up. You pick off the two pushing into here. Now I'm gonna continue to defend my Venezia. Shimakaze shows up. Or defend my Shimakaze against this Venezia. He's been asking for help for a while, but no one's really been kind enough to help him. Oh, he's being chased, so assuming the Venezia is going to round that corner quite tight. Oh, he's not actually chasing in the way I thought he would. So my first strike is going to go fairly wide. As you can see, bow in, but I still do manage to land 4 bombs thanks to some nice RNG and a fire. Shimakaze will hit his suicide torps. You did see the Venezia damage controlled my fire almost immediately, so I suspect he will flood. Give him a little bit of lead. Now, the Audacious, unlike the Implacable before her, has a superior level bomber, but it still is prone to the RNG. As you can see, that better reticle resulted in less damage. Kind of annoying. Sorry about that frame lag. Enemy Midway is launching torpedo bombers. The only good target here is the North Carolina, so I assume he's going after that. I mean, it's that or me, basically. He might honestly divert from me, and I'm exposed now, so... He's still that Venezia is still flooding. Okay, now you can see this is a problem. Now, if I had TBM-1, like most other carrier torpedo bombers, I would be able to go out and attack, but because I have that short arming distance, I've opted for attack plane this time, which, while useful, as I accidentally tag this Midway plane, trying to get it over my allied AA in order to get the fighter to despawn. I ditched those torpedoes because I was concerned that I might lose the whole squadron, but thankfully I got the Georgia to trim the fighter by running over to the Georgia. Staying at a rather conservative damage total. I'm going to start on that Moskva, who's in my cap. You can see he's quite close to that island, and his AA range is quite long, engaging at 6.6 kilometers or 6.8. I'm not quite sure which one. One of the two. Drop a fighter for my cluster. He's trying to nose in. It's a fresh fighter from his allied carrier. Gonna make use of that short arming distance now. Should be slowing to a stop since he's taking quite the focus fire. Not a great angle. You can see I can squeeze them off, but unless he reverses, he's gonna dodge most of them. But I have a tool for this. Now the Audacious level bomber, unlike the Implacables, as I was mentioning, is superior in that it's a bigger bomb. It's a 500-pound bomb as opposed to a 250-pound bomb, which results in the HE alpha being higher. I think it's 6,000 as opposed to 4,800. Fire chance is also good, 40%. You drop 6 per plane, so that's 18 and a pass because 3x3 setup. But most importantly, you have 41mm of penetration, and this means against pesky American battleships, for example, with that 38mm middle deck, you pen them all over. Now versus the Moscow with 50mm plates in certain sections, you still are going to suffer the same issues. Rounding about, coming forward above his nose. Want to get the nose on direction of approach. Planes are fairly tanky, of course. The Wyvern is durable. He appears to be accelerating just slowly, so just kind of put the reticle onto him and lead him a bit forward. You can see me getting the 4 shatters and 2 penetrations, even though I'm dropping 18 500-pound bombs. The consistency of the level bombers is still, well, inconsistent. He appears to have beached himself. So I'm gonna miss some amount of my spread. This time I get 4 pens, but the output is mediocre. Nevertheless, we will follow up. Cyclone is kicking in now, so we're quite blind. Someone on my team, the Z52 on my team, does help us to dispatch our target. Gonna approach that Iowa. He's beside a Thunderer, but the Cyclone will prevent the Thunderer's AA from engaging us until we're right on top of the Iowa. Only now does he have vision. Pop my heal. Get the fighter up, unfortunately. Now these are fairly slow British torpedoes, even with the converging pattern. Gonna have to bypass that Thunderer. As you can see, we're too close, even with the short arming time. Thanks to that cooldown, land 1 torpedo onto the Iowa. We'll take it. 3 more for that. No flooding, and we know there's a fighter patrol up for the Iowa. Triple strike onto the triple torpedo strike onto the North Carolina. My Moskva back here should really get back into the action because, well, you're not gonna have much of a match, my dude. Iowa fighter's probably still up, unfortunately, even though I can't see it. Now, ideally, I'd hit the Thunder. The Thunder is coated in 32mm of armor, so it's very vulnerable. The Iowa, I guess, is kind of the same in this case, because I'm playing the Audacious rather than a lower tier Brit, such as the Furious or Implacable. Fairly good spread there. You can see the damage output does get better, but turret armor quite clearly does still shatter all forms of bombs, so when you're just spraying a target with 18 bombs, some of them are liable to hit those turret faces. He's coming forward with his 33-knot Iowa hull. As a result, I do miss a fair amount, but I do get a fire. That drop just now was just a bit underlet. You can see him slowly accumulating damage by bleeding out. My reserves still looking very healthy, especially my rockets. Haven't been using them very much. They are an anti-light target rocket, 27mm of penetration, unlike the 30 of the Hakuryu. Fire does burn out the Iowa, or the 67 of the Midway's Tiny Tims, if you choose to use that loadout, or the 33 of the Havar loadout. Now there's a fighter over this North Carolina, which makes this risky, but he's on the edge. If you can see that overlapping color. So he should be fairly easy to dispatch here. Now North Carolina has a fairly weak torpedo belt, I believe it's in the 20s, if that. So with that combined with this converging pattern, should allow me to land multiple torpedoes and secure that kill. Shimakaze harassing, but it's just him in the Midway now. I'm gonna actually check out the Midway first. It's probably been a while since we've seen him. I'll deal with that Shimakaze at my leisure with my numerous rockets. But since we've already flown out here already, might as well. Now, if I were the Midway, I actually probably would have tried to go for the cap, but he might have just pushed down toward the corner or even turned around. I haven't been paying attention to the minimap in terms of the Midway, so this could have been spotted a long time ago and he could be, well, quite far. So I'm kind of wasting my time, but this match is secure, so. Torpedo bombers briefly spotted. That suggests to me he's maybe up here. And Georgia does dispatch Shimakaze. And now all that's left is for us to hunt down the Midway. Fairly tame game, 119 damage, very ordinary for the Audacious. She's quite capable of stacking a lot more damage. It would be nice to collect our 5th kill for our Kraken, but as you can see, most of this bleed damage is on probably battleships, which is why we haven't gotten a high caliber confed yet. Oh no, he's over here. Okay, I'm just gonna relaunch at this point. So versus the carrier, torpedo bombers are the best squadron because you don't have to deal with armor. Midway has like 87mm deck plating, so it obviously shatters my level bombers. Unlike at tier 8, where the Implacable and now also the Indomitable with their level bombers are actually quite excellent against enemy flat tops. Because the Hakuryu and Midway have uniform armor decks, and the Audacious still has significant armor deck, with that middle section strip of 102mm deck armor, the efficacy of the 41mm penetration. Level bombers goes quite a bit down. Looks like he's behind here. I would drop that Bismarck fighter, but I've used all the fighters on my torpedo bomber squadron from the looks of it. I know where the Midway is now, so I should turn my hull toward him. Not doing anything anyway. Should conserve boost now. Just probing. And finally we do find him. He drops a fighter, so we have to stay outside of it until we're ready to approach. I'm gonna get ahead of his bow. And now that we have the proper angle, we plunge. Now I don't have that much boost here, and remember the Western Wyvern's not that fast, so I'm gonna have to expend this consumable if I'm gonna punch through the fighters. Give him fairly the lead. Looks like I overled by a little bit. He's hard turning in, but I might still land that first torpedo thanks to the short arming time, and indeed I do. Now as I mentioned, normally various squadrons are faster or slower. But in this case of the Audacious, even the rocket plane squadron is slow. They all use the same plane, so it is what it is. Now the rocket's only have 27mm of penetration. We know his deck is uniform 87, but there still are sections on the side of his hull which are 25 or less, as long as you avoid the belt armor on either side of the Midway, and as well there is his conning tower as a target. Since this game is quickly coming to a close, he full turn and carries of enormous turning circles and rudder ships, so I expect him to be somewhere right here, about bow into us. Now the front of his ship around the bow should be 25, and it extends just in front of the actual flight deck. If you remember the Midway, he has a pair of AA mounts on the bow of his ship, a pair of 40mm Beaufort's nests. So as a result, should be able to penetrate that armor. He dispatches my Bourgogne, or Bourgogne. Don't have the right angle, but if you can kind of see, the front extends a little bit outward. This fighter's going to engage me, but I do manage to slam some amount of the rockets into the side of his ship. These are going to die. Now that kill against the Bourgogne has bought us some extra time, so I'm going to relaunch with the torpedo bombers. As you can see, none of them survived except the squadron that actually made the attack. Or the flight that made the attack, I suppose. This is of course because of all the various escort planes. Again, my torpedo bombers don't have any fighters, so I cannot drop fighters to either keep the Midway lit or protect my allies, which is unfortunate. I'm going to hold on to 6 planes, one set to penetrate the defenses, and one set to drop the ordnance. This is of course necessary because you need to combat the defense fighter of the enemy carrier. No boost this time. He's angled away, so he's fleeing. So it's going to be awkward for us to hit him, but remember the timer is ticking, so I don't have that much time to maneuver around. Punching through this fighter, however, is basically impossible without a full boost bar, so I do have to go around. It does fade. At this point, 6 kilometers, 982, probably not going to be able to land this drop, unfortunately, so 131 is going to be what we're going to settle with. And, as I mentioned, slow speed combined with no boost means that we are going to end the game without making that strike. Still, a comfy Audacious game. She is fully capable of farming some outrageous numbers, so nothing too impressive, but that Shimikaze at the beginning of the game obviously was a bit overzealous in terms of getting into the cap before smoking. In that situation, as a torpedo boat, as the ever cooperative client kicks me out without showing me my scorecard, you do want to expend your smoke. Now, reopening my scorecard, thank you World of Warships client. 131,000 damage, 13 torpedo hits, 32 bomb hits, 9 incaps, 4 kills, 5 fires, 2 floods, 4 defender ribbons, 9 spotting ribbons, 57 rocket strikes, and 6 planes interdicted by fighter. Team score wise, second on the team at only 1800. We did some bullying of some tier 8s, including that North Carolina, so not too much to write home about. Mostly battleship damage, as I mentioned. A small amount of dots, and then mostly torpedo alpha. Anyhow, nothing too impressive there, just some very basic Audacious gameplay, so let's head back in for one more. And hopefully we can get something a little more interesting to talk about. But as I was noting, the Audacious's primary role as within the tier 10 carriers is as a bit of a damage over time carrier. She doesn't have a real alpha weapon thanks to the relative unreliability of the British level bomber. It can inflict large amounts of damage on unsaturated targets, as you were able to see. However, you cannot guarantee the damage always, unlike the case with the Hikaryu's armor-piercing dive bombers or the Midway's high-explosive dive bombers, where if you aim properly, you can more or less guarantee some amount of significant damage. Even if you aim perfectly 10 times and make the same attack pass on the same target 10 times, you're not guaranteed to get consistent damage over those 10 passes. The average damage is actually probably around the same as a Midway or Hakuryu, but the difference is that player skill in mitigating the RNG of HEDPs or APTPs is completely not applicable to the Audacious herself, thanks to that random spread pattern of the 18 bombs dropped. So as a result, the Audacious finds herself relegated to kind of dot stacking instead as her reliable form of damage, trying to set fires and floods and follow up with another squadron. Now there is no other opposing carrier in the queue right now, which is why the queue is in fact taking a little bit. I do hesitate to wonder about what's going to happen if I sit too long. Now there's another carrier, but there's no guarantees at tier 10. Apparently it is, because the game does immediately queue almost. So hooray, after 2 minutes, Matchmaker manages to find us a opponent. So moving on to the match. This time pure tier 10s. Against an enemy Audacious, who I don't recognize her name, but this clan I think I do, so could be challenging. I also have a lot of no clanners on my teams, which is not necessarily a bad thing all the time, but it does tend to suggest that their player skill level might be a bit lower. So what this means realistically for me as a solo player is that I need to put effort into making sure I have as much impact as possible, because I can't guarantee that some of my teammates are going to pull their weight. Now moving on into the match, Montana, Thunder, Repub, Yamato, Kremlin, so much more AA on the battleships this time, especially because they're all tier 10s now. Des Moines, Worcester, Venetia, Zao, Moskva, Americans a bit thorny, mostly the Worcester, not so much the Des Moines these days, which is sad but true. Venetia, whatever. Zao, whatever. Moskva, only if he has defensive fire. And single destroyer in the Shimakaze. Mirrored spawns. He's not divisioned, which means he is over here. At A cap, or beneath A cap, rather. So I'm going to start out by scouting with my Westland Wyverns versus this kind of AA. It is probably better to pre-drop, so I'm going to dump some rockets into the mountain. Find the Venetia with her large spawning radius. It's coming forward. Just probing for the Shimakaze. Don't quite find him yet. Now Venetia is relatively thin-skinned in terms of armor. However, she has a 40mm icebreaker belt. As I fail to do the mountain climb. Find the Des Moines. Last plane. Gonna try and fly this one out because I can't actually make any attacks with this. Don't want to continue wasting my time. Just gonna probe. Looks like that Des Moines going for island cover. So if he was going to go across, I would have launched torpedo bombers. But since he's going for cover, I'm actually gonna go for the level bombers. We're gonna go after this Des Moines. He's liable to park right about here. Since he's parking, that means these Audacious level bombers will have a good shot at getting some easy hits off on a relatively static target. Now the Des Moines has 27mm plate, these have 41mm penetration, which means they pen him all over, which means that at the beginning of the match, when he hasn't taken any HE damage, they're liable to do massive amounts of damage. Now, enemy Audacious here, coming in with level bombers. My Salem, he's kind of thinking the same thing. It looks like attacking my Salem. Oh, there's the Des Moines. Arm quite early to get my arming bonus, 20% defense bonus for being in an armed attack. You can see he's quite still, so all I do is put him in the center. Now there's a Repub here. That's 6 bombs for a lot of damage, 10,000. Not a bad pass, right? And it looks like he damage controlled his fire. Now I am also in the Republic's AA aura, so unfortunately it's going to trim one of my planes, but can follow up fairly easily. Another 5,000, gonna relaunch with the level bombers just thanks to his relative position. I could also launch torpedo bombers and swoop in from the side, but it's much easier just to take one pass on of level bombers to follow up with fires. So against this kind of attack, you really don't want to be holding up like that Des Moines. You want to stay a little more mobile. Now you can use this island as cover, but you want to be able to move and respond and move away from the rock. So this Des Moines is not playing it correctly. There are things you can do to mitigate damage versus carriers, sitting around and hoping that the carrier won't attack you while you're sitting there and doing absolutely nothing about it. It's definitely not the way to go. Now arm quite early, just outside of his AA range, then engage the boost as we're about to touch that long range 5.8 kilometer aura. Now he's still not moving, steadfastly determined to show off that just dodge is not just a meme. You can dodge by sitting still in his books. Now I don't think his theory is correct. Note that this time without the Repub, just the lone Des Moines aura is nothing to write home about. I try and correct my lineup thanks to having time, thanks to the last guess, but I'll just kill him with the raw alpha. And that's 30,000 Des Moines damage. Next target, they're all clustered here. Let's look for that Venezia. I know I've killed most of them at A. My DD on the other hand is wandering about. I still yet to find their Shimakaze. Haven't been paying attention and looking for torpedoes. That's one of the easy ways to find targets. Audacious in the meantime is attacking my Stalingrad, but as we iterated last game, when I was attacking the Moskva with level bombers, they are not the most effective weapon against Russian cruisers. Nevertheless, considering dropping him a fighter, but the Audacious has already made 2 passes, so it's somewhat pointless. Shimakaze is attempting to take cap, but he's beside the Worcester, which makes him a bit of a no-go. Hopefully my teammates just shoot at him. We can get resets that way. I'm gonna attack this Venezia, he's on his own. Torpedo bombers aren't exactly the easiest to use here. Oh, attack a little early. Now thanks to that short attack time without TVM1, chasing like this is not the easiest. The Venezia is fast, I don't have that much time to make my attack, and I didn't have boost ready, so it's definitely going to be tricky. Pop my heal. Venezia A is not great, but still good enough to kill planes. He does dodge out on the chase set, but this does force him to broadside my Stalingrad, so I'm going to see what's going to happen. I'm guessing he's going to turn back out, but if he doesn't, then I can just do this. That plane has locked me, so I'm going to enter the attack while I look back so you can take a look. We do scam him with 2 torpedoes and get a flood. Sadly, the enemy does take the cap with the help of the Worcester, which as I assume is sitting in a Shimakaze smokescreen. It does cost the Worcester quite a bit of health though, and looks like his life, from the looks of it, is at 42 health now. I don't see a smokescreen, which means I can hunt a Shimakaze with my anti-destroyer rockets. Now as I mentioned, 42 rockets per pass, 3x3 setup, each plane carries 14 rockets, 14 by 3 is 42, so that's where the 42 comes from. 27mm of penetration, damage is unpresent per rocket, but you're just going for a huge mass of rockets launched at the target when you play Audacious. Now Shimakaze is behind that rock, which means he's too close for me to engage at this point. He is A on. which is interesting. Holding down on the boost right now to try and get it to narrow. 6 rockets for 5,000, a fire and a broken or incapacitation. And he's lit up for my whole bloody team. Now my team does dispatch him. These rockets are not going to survive. So I'm going to send them into the Yamato superstructure if I can. I had to attack a little early, so only the rockets that skim superstructure managed to damage, but because I was in that thick AA cluster, just had to commit to launching. They weren't going to survive. So note how that low penetration of 27mm resulted in, well, a fairly suboptimal attack. I think I did get a fire, though, with that one rocket that managed to pen him. So Yamato and Kremlin means pre-drop. So what I'm probably going to do is slingshot, so note how there's a fairly long rearming time, 2.4 seconds. So we're going to have to try for a fairly ambitious slingshot if we want to slingshot that Yamato. Now the plane is slow and I don't have that much boost, so let's go for it's a fairly long immunity frame time, an 8-kilometer unboosted slingshot. I haven't actually done too many level bomber slingshots, so you'll have to forgive me if I miss this. So that put us 3 kilometers out. That was not bad at all, honestly. Basically what we wanted. Looks pretty good. The Yamato is reversing, and we get a follow-up fire, but no penetrations. 8 non-pens. Note that the Yamato has a 57mm middle deck, which is why he can shatter those 41mm penetration bombs. I only pen him on superstructure, nose, and stern plate, and, well, my bombs failed to hit him on any of those areas in spite of dropping that mass of 18 bombs. Like I said, Audacious is just inconsistent at core. Now I'm going to go with a full squadron with the follow-up flood with the torpedo bombers. Yamato does have an impressive torpedo bolt protection of, what is it, like 56%? It's also moving forward, and he's beside a Kremlin, but I do have my heel. We'll see he's turning out and away. It's going to make it difficult to chase, so I need to get in front of him before I engage him. Wait for it. I'm trying to conserve my boost. We're chasing out and away, so it's not going to be the easiest. Pop my heel, because we're going to get engaged by the Kremlin's AA as well. There's also a Zhao here. Oh, okay, I missed. There's definitely a miss-aim on my part. The Zhao here. I'm going to turn tight inside. I might land that torpedo still onto that Yamato. Nope, no dice. I'm gonna assume my teammates will shoot up that Zhao, so I'm gonna just dump onto the Yamato and try and finalize. Pretty widespread, however, you'll note. I don't even see the other torpedo. I do land one hit, but it's not quite fatal by itself, and I need my Yamato to follow up and help in order to actually get that kill. Pretty low damage here. This game has been quite a rout. The only thing keeping them in the game is the fact that they got that cap early. Which is unfortunate, but new year, new game, right? Although this is kind of more like same story. Or new year, same shit, I guess you could say. Pardon my language. The Unknown King dispatches the Montana up there, leaving just several thinly armored battleships. I really don't care about that Tunisia. You can continue not playing the game over there. I really could care less. Just gonna look for an easy target. Tunisia dispatches my Yamato. That should buy us some more time to farm some damage, because, well, this game's gonna hurt our averages right now. The Audacious is very capable of farming damage, so as a result, our average damage tends to be quite high, especially if you degen and farm battleships. Yamato is Thunder is responding to our attacks, so not gonna get a perfect pass, but as you can see, very few shatters compared to, say, attacking the Yamato. Unfortunately, it's not going to be easy for me to get a follow-up attack onto him, so we're going to have to settle for a fire and 7k damage. Instead, we're going to attack the Moskva here. He's reversing, so just lead a little bit behind him. Moskva's fairly fast. Looks like I overled, but not bad. A lot of my bombs landed on his stern, 25mm stern plating. So as a result, we were able to eke some damage out. Thunderer dies, unfortunately, so much for my fire damage. But at least my fire on my Moskva ticked for a little bit, though he seems to have extinguished it by now. Just shy of 100,000, hoping for something close to 130 to be quite frank. Venezia is closer, but it's a Venezia. He's fairly maneuverable, so not interested in hitting him that much. Instead, I would prefer to hit that Moskva, who does die. So I guess instead we'll go after that repub. Now I've expended most of my boost trying to get to the target before my teammates kill him. Of course, my teammates do quite a bit of damage. Now I'm going to be able to make multiple attacks if I attack the repub, but only one if I attack the Audacious. So we go for the repub, drop a fighter to keep the Audacious lit, keep him busy. My teammates can have at him. We've re-established a small amount of boost, drop into the attack run in order to get that defensive bonus. Not too much boost here, but he's not moving particularly quickly. He's turning in a way so as to dodge my first attack, but that's quite alright. I will at least get the second, and I do still manage to land one torpedo. Maneuverable British torpedoes mean I can arm inside of the turn and do this. Now this is not going to be a perfectly aimed drop, so I might only land one or two. That's quite alright. We will get the 3 torpedoes we were looking for at the very least. Break 6 digits. Plane is dying. Just jamming down on the mouse button to try and get that torpedo into the water. Fish in the water, but based on the dispersion, it's probably going to miss. We launch the level bombers. Again, we're going to ignore the carrier, just let my teammates eviscerate him. But the triple cap does time us out. Unfortunate and inauspicious start to the new year, but honestly, I will take it. 2 wins is 2 wins on the Audacious. Only 6 torpedoes this time, unlike the 13 of last time. A lot more level bomber usage, especially on the Des Moines early, as you saw. When people just sit still, you can get some decent results, but against maneuvering targets, such as even that Thunderer at the end, as you saw, they can mitigate a lot of damage of the level bombers. Base experience quite a bit lower this time. Again, was unable to do too much and didn't attack that destroyer until the very end. Anyhow, just some quick Audacious games. I've been working on my Puerto Rico grinds, so I have not been able to play as much aircraft carriers as I would have liked. But I am done now. I finished my 6th directive, and if I go to the dockyard here, I don't have the Puerto Rico yet to show off, unfortunately. But if we go to the dockyard here, we'll see that we are basically done. We've built most of her, she's ended up at the end. I did end up having to use 1 premium booster, so before any of you go full DJ Salt on me, I did have to do some small dolphin whaling, as some might say. But if we go and hover here, we're going to complete 36 out of 36, so we will eventually have a Puerto Rico to work with. Our crappy four-gun Alaska is going to arrive in our port within the next week. But anyhow, all that aside, that was just some quick Audacious to head off to New Year. A for, I don't know, A for Audacious at the head of a new year. Before we go, just a quick glance at my modules and upgrades. So, Aircraft Modification 1 and Aircraft Engines Modification 1, you don't take anything else in slots 1 and 2 anyway. For the Audacious, thanks to the short arming time of the British torpedoes, I do opt to take Attack Aircraft Modification 1 to make some kind of more tricky rocket attacks that you can do kind of at the top of the mountains, for example, or gliding off of a mountain, which does require a bit more aim time, but there are definitely some trade-offs. As you saw, there were definitely moments there where if I had TBM 1 with the extra 5 seconds on torpedo aim time, I could have done some other stuff. Nevertheless, since torpedo bombers are your most consistent squadron, I choose to put my health points onto the torpedo bombers, but they do have access to that heal. So if you argue that you'd rather put the health onto the level bombers since they don't have a heal, that's perfectly fine. For slot 5, extra deck space rather than concealment. The reserves of the Audacious are relatively poor, especially compared to our two peers, the Midway and the Kiryu, so I highly recommend the extra deck space just for extra starting planes and region time. And last but not least, Air Group's Modification 2 for some universal health. The Audacious has the tankiest planes of the three Tier 10 carriers, so why not stack on a percentage bonus, which quite obviously gives a large amount of bonus. Now you could take Flight Control Modification 2, but the Westland Wyvern's a fairly slow plane, so even with the plus 5% cruising speed, they still don't quite compete. It does probably alleviate some of the long turnaround time and long follow-up time problems, but overall I think the health is more consistent for just making sure you get the drops off when you get onto the target. Captain-wise, my Audacious captain hasn't changed. It's a very standard captain, your universal 9 points for all carriers. In my opinion, torpedo acceleration is indispensable with a few notable exceptions. Maybe the Kaga can get away with it because her 3x4 setup launching 4 torpedoes at once creates a pretty undodgeable net, and it's not meant for anti-destroyer use anyway, but that's just a Kaga thing specifically. So all that aside, your core 9 points, and then probably last gasp, it's 10 points improved engines, 13 points concealment expert first because the Audacious has an enormous surface detection. Without it, something in the 15s, which is very uncomfortable, which puts us to quite obviously 16, and then to top off the build, demolition expert for a bit of extra fire chance on your bombs and rockets. Extra 5% per bomb is definitely a big jump when you're dropping 18 bombs. Anyhow, that was a quick Audacious game or two to crown the new year. I hope you guys are enjoying your holidays, and even if you aren't, I hope things take a turn for the better in the new year. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Cheers.